The last night before Warshay chose to stand with a human. Not her Empire asterisk, the reconnaissance ship Terra's Edge spun through the violet atmosphere of Zelthora's moon like a dying star, trailing smoke and sparks into the crystalline night. The captain, Marcus Stone, gripped the failing controls, his knuckles white against the cracked console as warning alarms shrieked their mechanical panic. The diplomatic mission to the Vexian Empire had gone sideways faster than a supernova, and now he was paying the price for humanity's desperate attempt at peace. "Come on, hold together," he muttered through gritted teeth, fighting the ship's death spiral. Below him stretched endless fields of bioluminescent grass that pulsed like a heartbeat, interrupted by towering spires of living crystal that sang in frequencies that made his bones ache. This was sacred ground, forbidden to outsiders, protected by energy shields that could vaporize a fleet, yet somehow his damaged ship had punched through. The impact came like thunder. Marcus felt his world explode into fragments of metal and pain as the ship carved a burning furrow through the sacred meadow. When consciousness returned, he found himself hanging upside down in his harness, tasting copper blood and breathing air that shimmered with strange particles. His left shoulder screamed protest as he fumbled with the release mechanism. Finally dropping onto what had been the ceiling, emergency lights cast eerie shadows through the smoke as Marcus crawled toward the breach in his ship's hull. Every breath, burned, every movement sent fresh waves of agony through his battered body. But he was alive, and that meant he still had a job to do. The diplomatic pouch containing humanity's final peace offering was somewhere in this wreckage. Without it, the war everyone feared would become inevitable. He emerged from the twisted metal into air that tasted of ozone and flowers, stumbling across grass that glowed brighter wherever his boots touched. The twin moons of Zelthara painted everything in silver and blue, making the crystalline spires sing their haunting songs. It was beautiful beyond human comprehension, and absolutely the worst place a human could possibly be. That's when he saw her Princess Nyla Vexus stood 30 meters away, her tall, elegant form silhouetted against the singing crystals. She wore ceremonial armor that seemed to be carved from starlight itself, and her skin held that distinctive blue-silver tinge that marked the Vexian nobility. Her eyes, large and luminous in the alien way, fixed on him with an expression he couldn't read. In her hand, a weapon that could reduce him to component atoms hummed with barely contained energy. "Human," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality of her species, though it held an edge of steel. "You have violated sacred ground. The penalty is death." Marcus slowly raised his hands, ignoring the sharp pain in his shoulder. "I come in peace," he said, then couldn't help adding, "though I'll admit my landing technique needs work." Something flickered across her features, surprise, perhaps, or amusement. Her weapon didn't lower, but neither did it fire. "You make jokes as you face death?" "It's a human thing," Marcus replied, studying her face. She was beautiful in the way a storm was beautiful, dangerous and captivating and utterly alien. "Tend to laugh when we're terrified. Keeps us sane. Terrified." She took a step closer, her head tilted in curiosity. "You show no fear in your scent, human. Your heart rate is elevated, but not from terror. What are you?" Marcus blinked. He hadn't realized the Vexians could read human biosigns so easily. "Marcus Stone, captain in the Terran diplomatic corps, and your Princess Nyla, Vexus heir too." The Crystal Throne was hoping to avoid meeting under these circumstances. Her weapon finally lowered a fraction. "You know of me? Your reputation precedes you. The Iron Princess, they call you in the diplomatic briefings. Said you've never shown mercy to an enemy." Managed a weak smile. "Guess we'll find out if that's true." For a long moment, they stood there in the alien moonlight, human and Vexian, while the crystal spires sang their ancient songs around them. Then, to Marcus's surprise, Princess Nyla deactivated her weapon entirely. "You are injured," she observed, gesturing toward his shoulder where blood had soaked through his flight suit. "I've had worse," Marcus lied. "You have crashed on the meditation fields during the night of reflection. By law, I should execute you immediately." She paused, studying him with those luminous eyes. "Yet you speak of peace, and carry yourself like a warrior who has seen too much death. Tell me, Marcus, Stone of Terra, why should I not honor the law? Marcus felt something shift in the air between them, subtle as the change in a quantum field. But just as significant, because he said quietly, maybe we're both tired of war. The holding cell carved from a single crystal spire was more comfortable than any prison Marcus had ever imagined. The walls glowed with soft, warm light that seemed to respond to his emotional state, and the air carried a subtle harmony that made his thoughts clearer. Still, a cage was a cage, no matter how beautiful. 3 days had passed since his crash, and Princess Nyla had visited each evening. She claimed it was to interrogate him about human military capabilities, but their conversations had ranged far. Beyond tactics and technology, they talked about art, philosophy, the weight of duty, and the loneliness of command. Each night, she stayed a little longer. Your people sing, she said on the 4th evening, settling gracefully onto the crystal bench across from his sleeping alcove. She had abandoned her armor for simpler robes that shifted color like aurora, and Marcus found it increasingly difficult to think of her as his captor. Some of us, he replied, do yours. The crystals sing for us. We have never needed to make our own music. She was quiet for a moment, then asked, will you sing for me? Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. I'm not much of a singer. Please. The word was soft, almost vulnerable. Marcus realized he would have done far more than sing if she asked with that voice. He chose an old Terran folk song, something about stars and longing and the distance between hearts. His voice was rough, untrained, but he sang it with feeling. When he finished, Nyla sat in silence, her luminous eyes reflecting the crystal's glow. It speaks of sadness, she said finally, and hope, Marcus added. The sadness makes the hope stronger. We do not understand this paradox. Axiom. Philosophy teaches that emotion should be pure, uncontaminated. She leaned forward slightly, yet your song contains multitudes. Humans are complicated, Marcus said with a smile. We don't do pure anything very well. She laughed then, a sound like crystal, chimes in a gentle wind, and Marcus felt something profound shift in his chest. This wasn't just attraction, though. The pull he felt toward her was undeniable. This was recognition, as if some part of his soul had found its match in the most impossible place. You are bleeding, Nyla observed, noticing where he had reopened, his shoulder wound moving too quickly before Marcus could protest. She was beside him on the sleeping platform, her hands gentle on his injured shoulder. Her touch was cool and soothing, but where her skin met his, Marcus felt a strange tingling sensation, like electricity but warmer. The wound is deeper than it appears, she murmured, her face close enough that he could see the intricate patterns. In her silver-blue irises, hold still, she pressed her palms against the injury, and Marcus felt a sensation like warm honey flowing through his veins. The pain began to recede, replaced by something else entirely. Images flashed through his mind that weren't his own crystal cities beneath alien suns. The weight of a crown that demanded sacrifice, the loneliness of always being watched but never truly seen. What? He began, but she gasped, jerking her hands away as if burned. The Cathara, she whispered, staring at her palms in shock. But that's impossible. You're not Vexian. Marcus felt the absence of her touch like a physical ache. What's the Cathara? A bonding ritual, older than our civilization. When two souls recognize each other, the crystals respond. She stood abruptly, pacing to the far wall. It only happens between those destined to share their lives, their very essence. But you're human. The crystals shouldn't. They cannot. But they did, Marcus said quietly, rising to follow her. When she didn't move away, he reached out carefully, touching her shoulder. Tingling sensation returned immediately, stronger this time, and he saw her shiver. This is impossible, she repeated, but her voice held wonder now instead of denial. Marcus turned her gently to face him. In the crystal's light, she looked ethereal, otherworldly, but the emotions in her eyes were entirely familiar. Longing, fear, hope. Maybe impossible things happen for a reason, he said softly, For a heartbeat, they stood frozen, the space between them charged with possibility. Then Nyla stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her breath, could see the rapid pulse at her throat. "The council discovers what has happened," she whispered. "They will execute us both." "Then we'd better make sure they don't find out," Marcus replied, and leaned down to kiss her. The moment their lips met, the crystal walls around them exploded into brilliant light, harmonies cascading through the air like a symphony of stars. Marcus felt their minds touch, their emotions intertwining until he couldn't tell where he ended and she began. In that instant, he understood what the Cathara truly was, not just bonding, but becoming. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the crystals had settled into a soft, pulsing glow that matched their heartbeats. "The temple," Nyla said urgently. "The high crystals will have sensed this. We must reach the temple before alarms began wailing throughout the spire." There. Harsh tones, a sharp contrast to the crystal's gentle song. "Before that," Marcus finished grimly. The secret passages through the crystal spires were older than the Vexian Empire itself, carved by the first settlers who had recognized the living nature of their new world. Princess Nyla moved through them with the confidence of someone who had explored every hidden corner as a child, while Marcus followed, still amazed by the bond that allowed him to sense her emotions as clearly as his own. "The temple lies at the heart of the sacred grove," she explained in whispers as they navigated a particularly narrow passage. "If the prophecies contain any truth about human Vexian bonding, we'll find it there." Marcus could feel her anxiety. Through their connection, a tight knot of fear and desperate hope. What prophecies? Stories the priests dismiss as mythology. Tales of the Vexera, the time when two races would unite to face a darkness from beyond the stars. She paused at a junction, listening for pursuit. "I always thought they were metaphors for internal struggle." They emerged from the passages into the sacred grove, where trees of living metal stretched toward the twin moons, their leaves singing soft harmonies. At the center stood the temple, not built but grown from a single massive crystal that reached toward the sky like a frozen flame. Its faceted walls reflected the moonlight in patterns that seemed to shift and dance. "It's alive," Marcus breathed, feeling the structure's awareness brush against his mind. "All the great crystals are. They are our partners, not our tools." Nyla approached the temple's base, pressing her palm against the smooth surface. "Ancient One, we seek the wisdom of the past to understand the present." The crystal responded with a pulse of warm light, and a doorway iris opened in the previously seamless wall. Inside the temple was a cathedral of light and sound, with crystalline formations that recorded and projected memories stretching back millennia. There, Nyla pointed to a section of the wall where images flickered like half-remembered dreams. The Vexeta prophecies. They stood together before the crystal memory bank, and as their joined hands touched the surface, the ancient recordings came to life around them. Marcus saw the rise of the Vexian Empire, their first contact with other species, the wars that had shaped their isolationist philosophy, and then, startling in its clarity, a vision of a human figure standing beside a Vexian. Their hands joined as they faced a threat that seemed to devour light itself. "The Void Hunters," Nyla whispered, her face pale. "The prophecy speaks of those who consume entire civilizations, leaving nothing but darkness in their wake. It says they will come when the galaxy is divided, when fear rules over hope." Marcus studied the projection, seeing details that chilled him. Ships like holes in space, beings that seemed to absorb the very concept of existence. The energy signatures our deep space probes have been detecting. The dead systems with no stars, no planets, just empty space where something used to be. "You've encountered them." Nyla's grip on his hand tightened. "Not directly. But the evidence has been mounting for months. It's part of why humanity reached out for this alliance. Can't face something like that alone." The crystal's projections shifted, showing scenes of cooperation between humans and Vexians. Technologies merged, fleets working in harmony, but overlaying it all was a sense of urgency, as if time was running short. "The bonding," Nyla said suddenly. "The Cathara between us. The prophecy says it's the key, the bridge between our peoples. Marcus turned to study her profile in the crystal's light, noting the way her silver-blue skin seemed to glow from within. You're saying we're some kind of chosen ones? I'm saying maybe the universe brought us together for a reason. Him fully, her luminous eyes serious. But Marcus, if this is true, if we're meant to unite our civilizations, then we're also meant to face the Void Hunters together. The weight of cosmic responsibility should have been terrifying, but looking at Nyla, Marcus felt only certainty. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would meet them as one. He cupped her face gently in his hands, marveling at the perfect fit, the way she leaned into his touch. Then we'd better get started. Their second kiss was different from the first. Where before had been wonder and discovery, now there was purpose and passion. The temple around them resonated with their joined emotions, crystals singing in harmonies that had been silent for centuries. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard, and Marcus could see his own desire reflected in her eyes. The bonding ceremony, she said softly. To complete the Cathara, we must join not just minds but bodies and souls. It cannot be undone. Marcus traced the elegant line of her jaw with his thumb. Are you asking or warning? Both. Her voice was barely a whisper. Once we complete the bond, there will be no going back. We will share everything, thoughts, feelings, lifespans. Your human mortality, my Vexian longevity, they will merge. You will live as long as I do, and I will carry part of your humanity forever. And you'll be exiled from your people, Marcus said, understanding the full scope of what she was offering. Perhaps. Or perhaps they will finally understand that love is stronger than fear. She smiled, and it was like sunrise on an alien world. The choice is yours, Marcus, Stone of Terra. Marcus looked around the ancient temple, feeling the weight of prophecy and possibility. Then he looked at the woman who had become his world in the space of a few impossible days. I choose you, he said simply. I choose us. The crystal alarm that shattered the temple's peace was like the scream of dying stars. Through their bond, Marcus felt Nyla's shock and terror as Imperial soldiers materialized around them in flashes of teleportation light. Their weapons trained with deadly precision. Princess Nyla Vexus. Commander Thane's voice carried the weight of absolute authority as he stepped forward, his ceremonial armor marking him as the Emperor's personal enforcer. By order of His Imperial Majesty Korath the Eternal, you will step away from the human and surrender yourself for judgment. Nyla's spine straightened with royal pride, but Marcus could feel her heart break through their incomplete bond. Commander, I can explain. Explanation is unnecessary. The temple crystals broadcast your bonding attempt throughout the capital. The Emperor has seen enough. Thane's cold gaze shifted to Marcus. The human will be executed immediately. For defiling sacred ground? No. The word came from Nyla with such force that the temple crystals rang in sympathy. I invoke the right of heart's truth. As heir to the crystal throne, I demand a formal hearing. Thane's expression didn't change. But Marcus caught the slight hesitation that suggested even an imperial enforcer couldn't ignore ancient law. The Emperor anticipated this response. You have until tomorrow's dawn to make your choice, Princess. Execute the human publicly and reclaim your honor, or face exile and watch him die regardless. The soldiers vanished as suddenly as they'd appeared, leaving behind only the acrid scent of ozone and shattered dreams. Marcus reached for Nyla as she swayed, catching her as her knees buckled. The right of heart's truth, he said softly. What does that mean? An ancient law that allows royalty to speak directly to the Emperor when matters of the heart conflict with matters of state. Her voice was hollow. I've bought us one night, nothing more. They made their way back through the secret passages. In silence, both wrestling with the impossible choice ahead, the crystal spire that had been Marcus's prison now felt like a sanctuary, its walls pulsing with the gentle rhythm that had become so familiar. There has to be another way, Marcus said as they settled together on the sleeping platform. Some legal precedent, some loophole, there isn't. Nyla's voice was calm, but he could feel her anguish through their bond. My father built his reign on the principle that Duty to the Empire supersedes all personal desires. He cannot appear weak by making an exception for his own daughter. Marcus pulled her against his chest, feeling the way she trembled despite her composed exterior. Then we run. Tonight, find a way off this moon, disappear into the outer systems, and abandon both our peoples to the Void Hunters. She looked up at him, her luminous eyes bright with unshed tears. The prophecy was clear, Marcus. We're the bridge between our civilizations. Without us, maybe someone else finds another way. Maybe humanity and the Vexian Empire figure out how to work together without a mystical bonding ritual. He cupped her face in his hands. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for a maybe. For a long moment, they held each other in the crystals. Gentle glow, two lovers caught between cosmic destiny and impossible choice. Then Nyla shifted, moving to straddle his lap, her hands framing his face. Then let us not waste the time we have, she whispered, and kissed him with desperate passion. The incomplete bond between them flared to life, amplifying every sensation, every emotion. Marcus felt her desire as his own, her need, her love, all mixing with his feelings until they were one swirling maelstrom of connection. Her robes shimmered away at a thought, revealing skin that seemed to hold starlight beneath its surface. Are you sure? He managed to ask, even as his hands traced the elegant curve of her spine. I have never been more certain of anything, she replied, her voice heavy with wanton love and desperate determination. They came together with a gentleness that belied the urgency of their situation, taking time to explore, to memorize, to worship each other with touch and breath and whispered words. The crystal walls around them sang in harmonies that matched their heartbeats, their shared gasps, the rhythm of their joining. Marcus had never experienced anything like the feedback loop of their bond during lovemaking. Every caress he gave her, he felt, returned threefold. Every kiss, every moment of pleasure shared and amplified until he couldn't tell where his body ended and hers began. They moved together in perfect synchronization, two beings becoming one in the most fundamental way possible. When release finally claimed them, it was with such intensity that the temple crystals throughout the grove rang out in celebration, their song carrying across the sacred moon like a declaration of love that defied empires and prophecies alike. Afterward, they lay tangled together, skin cooling in the crystal's gentle warmth, the bond between them deeper and stronger than ever. Marcus could feel her thoughts now, her emotions, as clearly as his own. She was afraid, but not of death. She was afraid of failing their peoples, of proving her father right about duty and sacrifice. The bonding is almost complete, she said softly, tracing patterns on his chest with her fingertip. One more joining like that, and we would be permanently linked. Nothing could separate us, not even death. Marcus caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. Would that be so terrible? If we were just Marcus and Nyla, lovers who found each other, against impossible odds, it would be paradise. She sighed, and he felt the weight of her royal burden like a physical ache. But we are more than ourselves now, carry the hopes of two civilizations. The crystal walls around them began to shift color, from the warm gold of contentment to the cooler blue of approaching dawn. Their time was running out. Whatever you decide tomorrow, Marcus said quietly, I want you to know that these past few days have been the most meaningful of my life. I love you, Nyla, Vexes. Not the princess, not the bridge between worlds, but you. She turned in his arms, her eyes bright with tears that caught the crystal's light like prisms. And I love you, Marcus Stone. Enough to defy an empire. Enough to choose hope over fear. As the first rays of Zeltheros's primary sun began to filter through the crystal walls, they held each other close, knowing that whatever came next would change not just their lives, but the fate of the galaxy itself. The imperial court assembled in the crystal amphitheater as the twin suns of Zelthera reached their zenith, casting rainbow patterns through the great dome that sheltered the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Emperor Korath sat upon his throne, of living crystal, his ancient face carved from centuries of absolute rule. While thousands of nobles filled the tiered seats with their whispered judgments, Marcus knelt in the center of the amphitheater, energy shackles, keeping his hands bound, while Princess Nyla stood before her father's throne in full ceremonial armor. The weapon she'd been given to execute him lay heavy in her hands, its blade humming with contained energy that could slice through starship hulls. Princess Nyla, Vex's Emperor Korath's voice resonated through the crystal dome, amplified by the living structures until it seemed to come from the very air itself. You stand accused of bonding with an alien in violation of our most sacred laws. How do you answer? I answer with truth, my Emperor. Nyla's voice carried clearly through the vast space, though Marcus could feel her terror through their bond. I am guilty of choosing love over law, hope over fear, and the possibility of unity over the certainty of division. A ripple of shock ran through the assembled court. To openly admit guilt in the face of capital punishment was unprecedented. But Marcus felt a surge of pride and love for this incredible woman who faced death with such dignity. You were raised from birth to serve the Empire, Korath continued, his tone unchanged. Every breath you have drawn, every privilege you have enjoyed, has been in service to our people's purity and strength. You would throw this away for a human? I would sacrifice everything for the chance to prevent our people's extinction, Nyla replied, and her words rang with conviction. Father, the Void Hunters approach. Our deep space monitors have confirmed what human intelligence already suspected. They consume entire civilizations, leaving nothing but emptiness in their wake. Alone, neither humanity nor the Vexian Empire can stand against them. Emperor Korath leaned forward, his ancient eyes narrowing. You speak of prophecies and myths. Child, I deal in realities. Then deal with this reality, Nyla said, and her voice rose with passion that made the crystal dome sing in response. The bonding between myself and Marcus, Stone has awakened something in the temple crystals that has been dormant for millennia. They recognize the truth that politics cannot, that survival sometimes requires us to become more than we were. She raised the execution blade, its energy field casting harsh light across her face. And Marcus felt his heart stop as he prepared for the end. Instead, she turned the weapon toward herself. I choose exile, she said clearly. I choose to stand with humanity rather than watch them face the darkness alone. And if the Empire cannot accept that love is stronger than fear, then the Empire deserves whatever fate awaits it. Nyla, no? Marcus shouted, struggling against his bonds as she prepared to activate the blade's self-destruct sequence, which would kill them both instantly. But Emperor Korath raised his hand, and the blade's hum died to silence. The ancient ruler studied his daughter for a long moment, and Marcus saw something shift in those calculating eyes. The deep space monitors, he said slowly. Watch, show them. Crystal projectors throughout the dome flickered to life, displaying star charts that made the assembled court gasp in horror. System after system showed as empty space where once had been thriving worlds. The void was spreading, consuming everything. In its path, in its trajectory, pointed directly toward both human and Vexian territories. How long? Korath asked quietly. 3 months, until they reach the outer colonies, Nyla replied. 6 months, until they arrive here. The Emperor rose from his throne, and the crystal dome fell silent with anticipation. He walked slowly down the steps until he stood before his daughter, studying her face with an expression Marcus couldn't read. You would bind yourself to this human permanently, share his mortality, his alien thoughts, his strange customs. I would bind myself to hope, Nyla replied, to the chance that our children might grow up in a galaxy not consumed by darkness. Korath turned his attention to Marcus, those ancient eyes seeming to peer directly into his soul. And you, human, you would take on Vexian longevity, our customs, our burdens? You would become something neither fully human nor Vexian? Marcus met the Emperor's gaze without flinching. I would become whatever was necessary to protect the people I love, both human and Vexian, for what felt like an eternity. The Emperor stood in silence, while the fate of 2 civilizations hung in the balance. Then, to everyone's shock, he began to laugh, not the cruel laughter of a tyrant, but the sound of genuine amusement. My daughter, he said, shaking his head. You have your mother's terrible habit of being right when everyone else is wrong. He turned to address the court, his voice carrying new authority. I dissolve the charges against Princess Nyla and her chosen bondmate. Furthermore, I hereby authorize the complete Cathara bonding ceremony and declare Marcus Stone to be a prince of the Empire, with all rights and responsibilities therein. The court erupted in shocked voices, but Korath raised his hand for silence. The Void Hunters come whether we acknowledge them or not. If the ancient prophecies speak truth, then perhaps it is time for the Empire to evolve. His gaze softened as he looked at his daughter. Complete your bonding, my child. Unite our peoples. May the galaxy forgive an old fool who nearly let pride destroy everything he sought to protect. The energy shackles fell away from Marcus's wrists, and he ran to Nyla, catching her as she collapsed with relief and overwhelming joy. Around them, the crystal dome began to sing with harmonies that spoke of new beginnings and impossible love triumphant. 3 hours later, in the sacred grove beneath the light of Zelthur's twin moons, Marcus and Nyla completed the Cathara bonding ceremony before representatives of both their peoples. As their souls joined permanently, the temple crystals erupted in light so brilliant it could be seen from orbit, declaring to the galaxy that something new had been born. The war with the Void Hunters would come as prophesied. But for the first time in either species' history, it would face it. Together human ingenuity and determination joined with Vexian wisdom and power, united by love that had chosen hope over fear, unity over division. And in the years to come, when children of both races learn the story of the princess who chose to stand with a human rather than her empire, they would understand that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from standing alone, but from from reaching across the impossible distance between hearts to find connection in the darkness.